It's also election season, as we told you earlier on. This time of the year, people are starting to think about how they're going to vote come November, whether it's in-person voting, absentee voting, or going to your local early voting center. So many different options to have your voice heard in this critical election we have coming up in just a few weeks. Joining us for more on the Splash Live to talk about your options for voting in this upcoming election is West Bloomfield Township Clerk Debbie Binder. Debbie, thank you for being with us. Happy to have you on the program today as we talk about this upcoming election. And right now is about the time where people that are going to be getting their votes in early, whether they're mailing them in or they're going to go to early voting here in the next few weeks, they're starting to make those decisions. And so as they make their decisions on the candidates and on the issues, we got to let them know what their options are for voting. Early voting, one of those that's gaining a lot of steam, but also a lot of confusion as of late.
I think there has been some confusion about the difference between early voting and absentee voting. And early voting is an option that is more recently available. Absentee voting has been available for a while, where a person may vote an absentee ballot, turn it in, and previously it was only counted on election day. One of the myths that does seem to have gone away is that the absentee ballots are only counted if they're needed. And we reassure everybody that all absentee ballots are counted. But now people have an option to participate in early voting, which is when they actually will fill out their ballot and vote it, run it through the tabulator 9 days before the election. It actually begins the second Saturday before the election and runs through the Sunday before the election. So it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday through Friday, then Saturday and Sunday, with daily hours of 8:30 to 4:30 and Thursdays noon to 8. Our early voting center is right over at the West Bloomfield Public Library on the main campus. We have been very fortunate that Lisa Brown organized a program for the local clerks that they're running the early voting for us. So it has made it a lot easier for us to share the expense of the staffing, and also having the county spend the money on the equipment to have those early voting centers. There are 19 around the Oakland County, as well as one that anybody in Oakland County can go vote in. Our early voting center is for voters in West Bloomfield Township, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and Orchard Lake. And anyone in there may participate in early voting by going to the West Bloomfield Main Library. Another thing people don't realize right now is you can actually bring your absentee ballot to an early voting center or to your precinct on election day, meaning you can vote it ahead of time if you're one who likes to sit down at a leisurely pace at your kitchen table or whatever and vote. You can fill out your ballot and then bring it to your early voting center or your precinct to cast it through the tabulator yourself. An advantage of turning in your absentee ballot at early voting or in your precinct is if you were to make some kind of a mistake on your ballot. Let's say you voted for too many choices for one of the contests, or like an example would be in an August primary, if you had crossed parties, the machine will kick it back to you and you will get a chance to spoil that ballot and request a new one, and you get a chance to correct that mistake. Where if you had cast that ballot as an absentee ballot and there's no voter to correct a mistake, then that ballot would there would be a determination made by a bipartisan team to cast that ballot as is. So it just gives you a second chance, if you did make a mistake, to get that feedback and spoil the ballot. It is an option for people to go for early voting, but they may also request an absentee ballot up to 4 p.m. the Monday before the election. That 4 p.m. is a hard stop. It is a statutory stop. So at 4:01, I cannot hand somebody an absentee ballot, because after 4, we're getting the electronic poll book together to show people who are in the precinct on election day who has already been issued an absentee ballot and who has not. So that deadline is important, but people do have options. And then if for whatever reason they miss early voting, or they missed, requesting their absentee ballot, there is always the option of going to your precinct on election day and voting in the polls. Which reminds me, one of the reasons.
So this time of the year, because we have so many options, and there are so many different options, not only with early voting versus in-person voting on the day of the election versus absentee voting by mail or by turning it in. There's so many different ways to get your voice heard, to have your ballot submitted for your one voice and your one vote in this upcoming election, that often this time of the year especially, we start to see some misconceptions come out there, some confusion that gets out there that leads to some misinformation in the community about are voting. What are some of those common misconceptions that we're starting to hear right now that you may be able to clear up about early voting and absentee voting?
I think there's more the confusion. People don't realize well, one, they don't realize that they can bring that absentee ballot to the early voting center, and I think that that's a lot of confusion. And there are just occasionally people that don't understand. So I don't know if we've seen the misconceptions as much. I would say the misconception that we have seen so far recently is people who want to come to the township to sign up to be an election challenger, and that's not a function of working in a precinct on election day. Our election inspectors are there to serve. Now, there is representation of multiple parties in a precinct. However, there is a mechanic to ensure that the election is run smoothly, not to be there and be as an election challenger. So somehow some information got out that they would sign up at the clerk's office to be an election challenger, and that is a very different role. So that's not something that they would sign up through the clerk's office. Our election inspectors are there to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and that the precinct is run smoothly on election day.
So to clarify, election inspectors, who are the workers that are working in our precincts and in our voting center at the West Bloomfield Town Hall, those are applied for through the Township Clerk's office. If someone wants to be an election challenger, that is their right, but that, I would assume then, that is through the state of Michigan, through the Secretary of State.
It's actually they would contact the organization. So the organization now, any organization that is approved, or the parties always have approval, does have to obtain a credential through Oakland County. So they have received that credential through the county, and then they would contact the organization to be a challenger, and they would go to the precinct and check in with the chairperson and be handed a badge that says challenger. But they would be based from an approved organization or issue that is requested challenger status.
More information on michigan.gov/vote if you want to be an election challenger and learn more about that opportunity. You can learn more about that there. And of course, if you have any questions about our local elections, you can contact the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office or your local clerk in Orchard Lake, Keego Harbor, and Sylvan Lake. Debbie, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Tyler. You have a great day.